Kelsey's milk came in the night. Her daughter's heart stopped beating. 3 months later, it still hasn't dried up, her body refusing to accept what her mind knows is true. When the Korean crime lord's infant son screams for 6 hours straight, every formula rejected, every doctor useless, she makes a choice that will destroy every boundary between them. This is how grief becomes love. Stay until the end. If it's your first time here, do well to hit the subscribe and like button. It's your own way of supporting and encouraging me to keep bringing nice stories for you. Don't forget to share it with your loved ones. Kelsey wasn't supposed to be on the 3rd floor. The rules had been clear from her first day at the Choi residence. Clean the 1st and 2nd floors. Never ask questions about the men in dark suits. Never look Taehyun Choi directly in the eyes. And absolutely never, under any circumstances, go near the 3rd floor where his infant son's nursery was located. She'd followed those rules perfectly for 2 weeks. But tonight, listening to that baby scream for the 6th consecutive hour, her body made the decision her mind couldn't rationalize. Her breasts ached, heavy and leaking despite the compression bra she wore to suppress the milk that had nowhere to go. 3 months since Chidinma died, and her body still prepared bottles for a mouth that would never drink again. The doctor said it would dry up eventually. They'd been wrong. Kelsey climbed the stairs, her worn sneakers silent on imported marble. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She could be fired for this. In Taehyun Choi's world, she could be worse than fired. Everyone in Seoul's Nigerian community knew the stories. Taehyun Choi controlled everything from Gangnam to the ports of Incheon. Shipping, nightclubs, politicians, judges, all of it flowed through his hands. Cross him, and you disappeared. Respect him, and you survived. Kelsey had needed to survive. Needed the money this housekeeping job provided. Needed to send funds back to Lagos for her mother's diabetes medication. Needed to pay the hospital bills from Chidinma's final days. Survival meant invisibility. But that baby's cries had the same pitch, the same desperate frequency as Chidinma's when she'd been hungry. Kelsey's body recognized it on a cellular level, flooding her with milk that soaked through her bra and dampened her shirt. 2 bodyguards stood outside the nursery door. They looked exhausted, helpless. Mr. Choi said, "No one goes in," one said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "That baby is suffering," Kelsey said quietly, meeting his eyes for the first time since she'd started working here. "I can help him." The bodyguards exchanged glances. After a moment, one stepped aside. The nursery was a palace designed for a prince. Hand-painted murals of Korean countryside covered the walls. A custom crib that probably cost more than a car sat beneath soft lighting. Every imaginable comfort surrounded the space. But none of it mattered to the infant who lay rigid in his father's arms, his tiny face contorted in misery. Taehyun Choi looked up as Kelsey entered. She nearly stepped back from the intensity in his dark eyes. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp features and a powerful build barely contained by his rolled-up dress shirt. Tattoos snaked up his forearms, Korean characters and images she couldn't read. His jaw was tight. His usual commanding presence reduced to helpless desperation as he tried and failed to soothe his son. "I didn't call for anyone," he said, his voice rough from hours of stress. "I know, sir. But Kelsey's voice caught. "I think I can help him. The pediatrician just left. There's nothing." "Mr. Choi," Kelsey interrupted something she'd never dared before. "I lost my daughter 3 months ago. She was 4 months old. I'm still producing milk. If your son is hungry and can't tolerate formula, I could." The words died in her throat as Taehyun's expression shifted from exhaustion to shock to something she couldn't quite read. The room fell absolutely silent, except for the baby's whimpers, which had quieted slightly at the sound of a new voice. "You're suggesting you nurse my son," Taehyun said slowly, each word carefully measured. Kelsey's hands twisted in front of her. "Only if you give permission, sir. Only if it might help him. I can't listen to him suffer anymore. No baby should feel that kind of pain." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications and broken rules. Taehyun studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face as if trying to read her soul. Then slowly, he stood and walked toward her. Kelsey's breath caught. He was taller than she'd realized, his presence overwhelming in the soft-lit nursery. "What's your name?" he asked. "Kelsey Okonkwo, sir." "How long have you been working here, Kelsey?" 2 weeks, sir." "And in 2 weeks, you've never tried to speak to me, never asked for anything, never even looked at me directly." His voice was quiet, thoughtful. "But you'll risk everything to help my son." "He's a baby," Kelsey said simply. "He's in pain. The rest doesn't matter." Something shifted in Taehyun's expression. He looked down at his son, then back at Kelsey. "If you're willing to do this," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I would be grateful." He placed the baby in Kelsey's arms, and the infant's weight settled against her chest like coming home. Her body recognized this, remembered this. The baby, she'd heard the staff call him Ji-woo, turned his face toward her instinctively, rooting, searching. "I'll leave you to it," Taehyun said. But he didn't move toward the door. "You can stay," Kelsey said, already lifting her shirt with trembling fingers. "He's your son. You should be here." Ji-woo latched on immediately, his small body relaxing for the first time in hours. The relief was instantaneous and visible. His tiny fists unclenched, his breathing evened out, the tension in his miniature frame melting away. Kelsey felt tears slip down her cheeks as she looked down at him. This beautiful child who wasn't hers, but needed her in this moment. She'd forgotten how it felt to pull and release, the primal satisfaction of providing exactly what was needed. Her body had been holding on to this milk, preparing for a baby who would never come back, and now it had purpose again. The ache in her breasts eased as Ji-woo nursed, his eyes drifting closed in contentment. Kelsey looked up to find Taehyun staring at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not anger, not disgust, but something raw and unguarded. Vulnerability, she realized. She was seeing him completely unmasked. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking on the words. "I didn't know I couldn't." He ran a hand through his dark hair, and Kelsey noticed it was shaking. "He's been in pain for so long. The doctors, the specialists, the formulas, nothing worked. I thought I was going to lose him." "You're not going to lose him," Kelsey said with quiet certainty. "He's strong. He just needed the right help." Taehyun pulled a chair closer and sat down, close enough that Kelsey could smell his cologne, something expensive and clean. He watched his son nurse with an expression of wonder, as if witnessing a miracle. "Tell me about your daughter," he said softly. Kelsey's breath hitched. No one had asked her that. Not her mother, not her friends from the Nigerian church in Itaewon, not the grief counselor the hospital had recommended. Everyone avoided the topic, dancing around her loss like it was contagious. "Her name was Chidinma," Kelsey began, her voice steady despite the tears. "She had the biggest brown eyes and the softest curls. She loved when I sang to her old Nigerian songs my grandmother taught me." She paused, adjusting Ji-woo's position slightly. "She was born with a heart defect. We knew from the beginning it was serious, but I thought I hoped." Her voice broke. "You don't have to," Taehyun started, but Kelsey shook her head. "I want to. No one lets me talk about her anymore. They think it's too painful, that I need to move on." She looked down at Ji-woo. "But she was my whole world for 4 months. Moving on feels like forgetting, and I can't forget her." "You shouldn't have to," Taehyun said firmly. "Grief isn't something you move past. It's something you carry with you." He paused, his jaw working. "My wife Ji-woo's mother, she died in childbirth 6 months ago. I understand not wanting to forget." Kelsey's eyes widened. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. It's not common knowledge. The family keeps certain things private." He reached out and gently touched Ji-woo's tiny hand. "She gave me him. Her last gift. And I've been terrified every single day that I'll fail him, that I won't be enough." "You're here," Kelsey said. "You're trying. That's what matters." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound Ji-woo's satisfied nursing. Kelsey felt something shift in the room, A connection forming that transcended employer and employee, that went beyond the circumstances that brought them together. They were two people who'd lost too much, who carried grief like a second skin, finding unexpected solace in helping a tiny life thrive. When Ji-woo finally pulled away, milk drunk and peaceful, Taehyun stood and took him gently from Kelsey's arms. He held his son against his chest, and Kelsey could see the tattoos on his forearms more clearly. Now names and dates, a family tree written in ink and memory. "How much do I pay you?" Taehyun asked suddenly. Kelsey blinked at the change in topic. 15,001 an hour, sir." "That's insulting." He looked at her directly, and Kelsey felt the full force of his presence. "Starting tomorrow, you're Ji-woo's nurse. 50,001 an hour, full benefits, and you'll live in the guest house on the property. You'll have your own space, but you'll be close enough to help him when he needs you." "Mr. Choi." Taehyun, he corrected. "If you're going to help raise my son, you should use my name." "That's too much," Kelsey protested, even as her heart raced at the thought of that kind of money. "I'm just helping." "You're saving his life," Taehyun said simply. "That's worth more than I could ever pay you, but I'm going to try." He walked to the door, Ji-woo sleeping peacefully against his shoulder. Before leaving, he turned back to Kelsey. "There are rules in my world, codes we live by. One of them is loyalty. You showed loyalty tonight, to someone who couldn't ask for it, couldn't repay it. That's rare. That's valuable." His dark eyes held hers. "You'll be under my protection now. No one will touch you. No one will harm you. You're part of this family." After he left, Kelsey sat alone in the nursery, her shirt still damp with milk, her mind reeling. She'd come upstairs to help a suffering baby. She was leaving with a new life, a new purpose, and the unsettling realization that Taehyun Choi wasn't just a crime lord to her anymore. He was a grieving father who'd just trusted her with his most precious gift. Before you continue, hit subscribe, because what starts as maternal instinct becomes something far more dangerous. The guest house was bigger than any place Kelsey had ever lived. One bedroom with a real bed, not a thin mattress on the floor of a shared goshuan. A full kitchen with appliances that looked like they'd never been used. A bathroom with a tub instead of just a shower stall. Windows that looked out over manicured gardens instead of narrow alleys. She'd moved in the next day with a single suitcase that contained everything she owned, feeling like she'd stepped into someone else's life. But it was the routine that followed that truly changed everything. Every 3 hours, day and night, Kelsey went to the main house to nurse Ji-woo. Taehyun was almost always there, whether it was 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. He'd greet her at the door himself, ignoring the confused looks from his security team, and lead her to whichever room Ji-woo was in. Sometimes it was the nursery, sometimes Taehyun's office. Once even the kitchen at 2 in the morning, when Ji-woo had woken up especially fussy. Taehyun never left during feedings. He stayed, watched, and gradually, they began to talk. Kelsey learned that he'd inherited his position at 25 when his father was killed in a territorial dispute with a Yakuza group. That he hated violence, but was good at it. That he'd wanted to study architecture before life decided otherwise. That he played piano when he couldn't sleep old Korean songs his mother had taught him. Taehyun learned that Kelsey had a degree in early childhood education from a small university in Lagos, but couldn't afford to use it because teaching jobs didn't pay enough to cover her mother's medical expenses. That she'd sung in church choirs her whole life. That she was terrified of thunderstorms but wouldn't admit it to anyone. That she'd never left Nigeria until 6 months ago. Had never seen snow. Had never imagined living in a place like Seoul. Why education? Taehyun asked one night, as Kelsey burped Ji-woo after a feeding. It was late, past midnight, and the mansion was quiet around them. Because children deserve advocates, Kelsey said simply. Especially children from neighborhoods like mine, kids who are brilliant and creative, but never get the chance to show it because the schools are underfunded, the teachers are overworked, and everyone's already decided they won't amount to anything. You sound angry. I am angry. Kelsey met his eyes. I'm angry that my daughter died because we had to choose between rent and better health insurance. I'm angry that I have a degree I can't use. I'm angry that—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Sorry, you don't need to hear this." "I want to hear it," Taehyun said intently. "You're always so calm, so composed. I want to know what's underneath." "Rage," Kelsey admitted. "Grief and rage and exhaustion. I'm tired of the world being divided into people who have everything and people who have nothing. I'm tired of watching good people work 3 jobs and still not make it. I'm tired of—" She stopped as her voice broke. Taehyun reached out and gently took Ji-woo from her arms, placing him in his crib. Then he did something that shocked her. He pulled her into a hug. Kelsey stiffened, uncertain. No one touched her anymore. After Chidinma died, even her friends had kept their distance, as if grief were contagious. But Taehyun's arms were solid and warm, and after a moment, she let herself lean into him. "You're allowed to be angry," he said quietly, his voice rumbling in his chest. "You're allowed to be exhausted. You don't have to be strong all the time." Kelsey's tears came then, hot and overwhelming. She cried for Chidinma, for the life she'd lost, for the unfairness of everything. And Taehyun held her through it, one hand gently rubbing her back, not saying anything, just being present. When she finally pulled away, embarrassed, Taehyun handed her a tissue and a glass of water that appeared from nowhere. "Better?" he asked. "I just fell apart in front of my employer," Kelsey said, wiping her eyes. "Professional, Kelsey. Really professional." "You fell apart in front of a friend," Taehyun corrected. "And friends take care of each other." "Friends." The word settled between them, strange and new. Kelsey looked up at him, really looked, and saw past the crime lord persona to the man underneath, a man who woke up at 2 in the morning when his son needed feeding, who remembered that she liked tea instead of coffee, who was trying so hard to be both mother and father to a baby who would never know the woman who died to give him life. "Thank you," Kelsey said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me, not just as help, but as a person." Taehyun smiled. A real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Hard not to see you, Kelsey. You're pretty unforgettable." "Haehyun, 7 port, Haehyun, Haehyun, Taehyun port, Haehyun." Taehyun smiled. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Then Ji-woo made a small sound in his sleep, and the spell broke. Taehyun cleared his throat, stepping back. "It's late. You should get some rest." "Yeah," Kelsey agreed, but neither of them moved. Finally, Taehyun walked her to the door. As she was leaving, he called her name. She turned back. "Tomorrow is Sunday," he said. "My one day without meetings. Would you and Ji-woo like to spend it with me? Maybe go to the gardens in Uedo. I hear they're beautiful this time of year." Kelsey's heart skipped. "That sounds nice. It's a date then." He paused. "Not a date, just a—" "I know what you meant," Kelsey said, smiling despite herself. "I'll see you tomorrow, Taehyun." She walked back to the guest house in the dark, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Behind her in the mansion, Taehyun stood at the window and watched until she was safely inside, a small smile playing at his lips. Neither of them was ready to admit what was growing between them, but they both felt it fragile and precious and terrifying. A connection built on shared grief, mutual respect, and the tiny life they both loved. 3 weeks into Kelsey's new position, everything fell apart. It started with the black SUVs that pulled up outside the mansion at dawn. Kelsey was already in the nursery with Ji-woo, having just finished his early morning feeding when she heard shouting downstairs. Male voices, angry and threatening. Then gunshots. Her blood turned to ice. She grabbed Ji-woo from his changing table, pressing him against her chest as she backed into the corner farthest from the door. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. But before she could dial, the nursery door burst open. It wasn't Taehyun. It was a man she'd never seen before, tall and heavy-set, with cold eyes. Behind him stood 2 more men, all armed. "That the kid?" the first man asked in Korean. "That's him," another confirmed, switching to accented English. Boss wants both of them. Kelsey's arms tightened around Jiwoo. You're not taking him. The man laughed. Lady, you got no say in this. Kim Jae-sung sends his regards to Taehan Choi. Tells him he should have taken the deal. A rival clan. Kelsey's mind raced through everything she'd overheard in the past weeks, fragments of phone conversations. Tense meetings. Taehyun had been refusing a partnership, saying he wouldn't work with someone who dealt in trafficking young women from Southeast Asia. And now they were retaliating by taking his son. Please, Kelsey said, hating how her voice shook. He's just a baby. He hasn't done anything. Neither did the 20 girls Kim wanted to move through Choi's ports, the man said coldly. But your boss decided to play hero. Now we're playing hardball. He moved toward her, and Kelsey did something she never imagined she'd do. She ran, not toward the door, where the other men stood, but toward the window. The nursery was on the 3rd floor, but there was a balcony, and if she could just, a hand grabbed her arm, spinning her around. Ji-woo screamed, feeling her terror. You got nowhere to go, sweetheart. Make this easy on yourself and the kid. Then the door slammed open with enough force to crack the frame, and Taehyun entered like an avenging angel. He had a gun in each hand. His white shirt was spattered with blood that Kelsey desperately hoped wasn't his. His dark eyes found Kelsey first, scanning her and Ji-woo for injuries, then shifted to the men in the room with an expression that promised death. Step away from them, Taehyun said, his voice deadly calm. Now, 3 against 1, Choi, the leader said, trying to sound confident. Even you can't. Taehyun shot him in the knee before he finished the sentence. The man went down screaming. The other 2 raised their weapons, but Taehyun was faster, more precise. 2 shots. Both perfect headshots. The men dropped. Kelsey pressed Ji-woo's face against her shoulder, trying to shield him from the violence, even as her whole body trembled. Taehyun crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands gentle, despite the violence they'd just enacted, as he checked them both over. Are you hurt? He demanded. Did they touch you? We're fine, Kelsey managed, though tears were streaming down her face. Taehyun, they said Kim. I know. Taehyun's jaw was tight. Min Jae, he shouted toward the hallway. His second-in-command appeared immediately. Get Kelsey and Ji-woo to the safe room. Now. Full lockdown protocol. Boss, you need medical. I said now. Taehyun's voice brooked no argument. He looked at Kelsey, and his expression softened fractionally. Go with Min Jae. You'll be safe there, I promise. But you're bleeding. I've had worse. He touched her cheek gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. Keep him safe, Kelsey. That's all I need you to do. Min Jae led them through a hidden door in the nursery that Kelsey had never noticed, down a narrow staircase to a reinforced room in the basement. It looked like something from a spy movie, thick walls, surveillance screens, supplies for days. Min Jae showed her how to lock it from inside, gave her a weapon she had no idea how to use, and told her Taehyun would come personally when it was safe. Then she was alone with Ji-woo in the silence, her heart hammering, her mind replaying those terrible moments upstairs. The blood, the gunshots, the casual way those men had discussed taking a baby as leverage. Ji-woo was crying, sensing her fear. Kelsey sat in the corner and automatically began to nurse him, the familiar action grounding her even as her mind spun. This was Taehyun's world. This was what she'd signed up for, even if she hadn't fully understood it before. People wanted to hurt him, wanted to hurt his son, wanted to hurt anyone who stood in their way. And she'd just put herself directly in the crossfire. Hours passed. Kelsey nursed Ji-woo, changed him, sang to him, tried to keep him calm, while her own fear ate at her insides. She checked the surveillance screens obsessively, but they only showed empty hallways. No sound, no information, just waiting. When the lock finally clicked open, Kelsey grabbed the gun Min Jae had given her, her hands shaking as she pointed it at the door. If those men had won, if they'd gotten past Taehyun, it's me, Taehyun's voice called. Kelsey, it's me. I'm alone. She lowered the gun as he entered, and nearly dropped it when she saw him fully. He was covered in blood now, his shirt torn, a makeshift bandage around his left arm. But he was alive. He was here. "Is it over?" Kelsey whispered. "It's over." Taehyun sank down beside her, his usual powerful presence diminished by exhaustion and pain. "Kim won't be a problem anymore. Neither will anyone else who thinks they can use my family to get to me. You're hurt." "I've had worse," he repeated, but winced when she gently touched his bandaged arm. Kelsey handed Ji-woo to him, then stood. "Stay there. I need to look at this properly." She found a first aid kit in the safe room supplies and returned to find Taehyun holding his son with infinite gentleness, whispering Korean words Kelsey didn't understand. She knelt beside them and carefully unwrapped the bandage. The bullet had grazed him not deep, but bleeding steadily. "This needs stitches," Kelsey said. "I'll have the doctor come. I can do it." At his surprised look, she added, "My mother was a nurse before she got sick. She taught me. Hold still." She worked carefully, her earlier terror transforming into focus. This was something she could do, something useful. Taehyun watched her face as she stitched, and when she'd finished and was wrapping a clean bandage, he caught her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for protecting him, for not running when you had the chance." "I would never leave him," Kelsey said simply. "He needs me." "I need you too," Taehyun admitted, the words raw and honest. "When is the time?" Kelsey challenged. "After more men come? After more violence?" "Taehyun, I just watched you kill 3 people. I'm sitting in a panic room with your blood on my hands. If not now, when?" He looked at her for a long moment, then set Ji-woo gently in the portable crib beside them. When he turned back to Kelsey, his dark eyes were intense, vulnerable, in a way she'd never seen. "I'm falling for you," he said simply. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first night when you risked everything for my son. Maybe later when you told me about Chidinma. Maybe just now when you faced down armed men rather than leave Ji-woo." He paused. "But it's happened, and I can't ignore it anymore." Kelsey's breath caught. "I know all the reasons it's wrong," Taehyun continued. "The danger. The difference in our worlds. The fact that you work for me. I know." He reached out and cupped her face gently. "But I also know that when I thought I might lose you today, when I saw those men in the nursery with you, I've never felt terror like that. Not even when I thought I'd lose Ji-woo." "I'm falling for you too," Kelsey whispered. "I've been trying not to, trying to keep it professional, to remember my place. But you make it impossible, Taehyun. You're not what I expected. You're not just the dangerous crime lord everyone fears. You're a father, a man trying to do right by his son. Someone who sees me as more than just—" He kissed her then, soft and careful, asking rather than demanding. Kelsey leaned into it, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders as the world narrowed to just this moment. This connection. This impossible, dangerous, perfect thing growing between them. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Taehyun rested his forehead against hers. "I can't promise you safety," he said. "I can't promise you normal. But I can promise you protection, loyalty, and everything I have to give." "That's enough," Kelsey said. "That's more than enough." Ji-woo made a small sound, and they both looked at him, sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the violence and confessions and shifting world around him. And Kelsey realized that somewhere along the way, this had become her family. Not by blood, not by traditional means, but by choice and circumstance and love. The aftermath of the attack changed everything and nothing. The mansion went into lockdown for 2 days, while Taehyun's security team swept every inch, upgraded every system, tripled the guards. Kelsey moved from the guest house into a suite on the 2nd floor, directly below Ji-woo's nursery, close enough to hear if he needed her, close enough to Taehyun's room that late-night visits became common. They didn't hide what was growing between them, but they were careful. Taehyun's world was watching, waiting to see if this connection was real or if Kelsey was just another temporary fixture. But as weeks turned into months, as Ji-woo grew stronger and healthier, as Kelsey became indispensable not just to the baby, but to Taehyun himself. Even the most skeptical members of Taehyun's organization had to accept it. Kelsey Okonkwo wasn't going anywhere. "Tell me again why we're doing this," Kelsey said, checking her reflection in the mirror. She wore a traditional Korean hanbok that Taehyun had bought her, deep blue silk with delicate embroidery. Her natural curls were styled in an elegant updo, and she looked, she had to admit, beautiful. "Because it's time," Taehyun said from the doorway, looking devastating in a tailored black suit. "Time for them to meet the woman who saved my son. The woman I love." 3 months had passed since the attack. 3 months of learning to navigate Taehyun's world, of understanding the codes and rules and unspoken hierarchies. 3 months of falling deeper in love with a man who was equal parts dangerous and devoted, ruthless and tender. Tonight was the first major family gathering since Jiwoo's mother had died, and Taehyun was introducing Kelsey as his partner, not his employee, not just Jiwoo's nurse, his partner. "Your aunts are going to hate me," Kelsey predicted. "My aunts hate everyone," Taehyun said with a small smile. "Except Jiwoo. And maybe you, once they see how happy you make me." He crossed the room and pulled her close. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready. We can wait." "No," Kelsey said firmly. "I'm ready. I want to be part of this. All of it. Your family, your world, your life. I'm not hiding anymore." The gathering was at Taehyun's uncle's estate in Pyeongchang-dong, a massive property that made the Choi mansion look modest. Kelsey carried Jiwoo, who was now 9 months old and thriving, his cheeks full and his eyes bright. He'd grown attached to Kelsey in a way that went beyond nursing. She was his constant, his comfort, the person he reached for when he was tired or scared. The Choi family was vast and intimidating. Uncles and aunts, cousins and associates, all dressed in expensive clothes and watching Kelsey with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. She was an outsider, a Nigerian woman from Lagos, dating the most powerful man in Seoul. The whispers followed her through the rooms, but Taehyun never left her side. His hand stayed at the small of her back, steady and sure. When his uncle Sang-woo made a pointed comment in Korean about appropriate partnerships, Taehyun's response was ice-cold and immediate, delivered in Korean, but Kelsey understood his tone perfectly. The room fell silent. Then Uncle Sang-woo, a man who'd been in the business for 50 years, smiled slowly and raised his glass. "To family," he said in English, and the others echoed him, some reluctantly, some genuinely. It was Taehyun's younger cousin, a woman named Haewon, who finally broke through Kelsey's careful walls. "That hanbok is gorgeous," she said, appearing at Kelsey's elbow with a glass of wine. "And I heard what you did protecting Jiwoo during the Kim situation. That took serious guts." "I didn't really think," Kelsey admitted. "I just reacted." "That's the best kind of courage." Haewon smiled warmly. "For what it's worth, I think you're exactly what Taehyun needs. And that baby definitely loves you. Look at him." Jiwoo had fallen asleep against Kelsey's chest, his small hand fisted in her hanbok, completely at peace. Kelsey looked down at him and felt her heart swell. "I love him too," she said softly. "More than I thought possible." "And Taehyun?" Kelsey looked across the room to where Taehyun stood talking with his uncle, his dark eyes finding hers even in conversation. "Him too," she admitted. "Definitely him too." Later that night, after they'd returned to the mansion and put Jiwoo to bed, Taehyun found Kelsey on the balcony overlooking the Han River. The Seoul skyline glittered in the distance, beautiful and vast. "You survived your first Choi family gathering," Taehyun said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "How do you feel?" "Exhausted," Kelsey admitted, leaning back against his chest. "But good. Like I belong. Maybe. You do belong." Taehyun turned her to face him, his expression serious. "Kelsey, I need to tell you something, ask you something." Her heart skipped. "Okay. When I met you, I was drowning. Jiwoo was sick. I was failing as a father. I couldn't see a way forward." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You saved us both. You gave Jiwoo health and me hope. You showed me that I could be more than what this life made me, that I could be a good father, a good man, because you see the good in me, even when I don't see it myself. Taehyun, let me finish. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Kelsey's breath stopped. I know this is fast. I know we come from different worlds. I know there are 1,000 reasons you should say no. But I also know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep holding you. I want to raise Ji-woo together and maybe, if you want, give him siblings. I want to show you the ocean and teach you Korean and take you to all the places you've never been. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the moonlight, a deep red ruby surrounded by diamonds. This was my grandmother's, he said quietly. She was the strongest woman I ever knew until I met you. She would have loved you. He met her eyes. Kelsey Okonkwo, will you marry me? Will you be my partner, my wife, Ji-woo's mother in every way that matters? Tears streamed down Kelsey's face. You're sure? About me? About this? I've never been more sure of anything. Taehyun's voice was steady, certain. Yes, Kelsey breathed. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her deep and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both smiling through tears, Kelsey looked at the ring on her hand and felt the weight of it. Not just the metal and stones, but what it represented. A new life, a new family, a future she'd never imagined, but now couldn't imagine living without. I love you, she said, even though you're impossible and dangerous, and completely changed my life. I love you too, Taehyun replied, even though you're stubborn and brave and completely ruined me for anyone else. They stood there on the balcony, holding each other as the city lights sparkled below. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something real from grief and danger and love. Inside the mansion, Ji-woo slept peacefully, dreaming whatever babies dream, safe and loved and cared for by two people who would protect him with everything they had. And Kelsey, who'd lost so much, who'd thought her heart was too broken to love again, realized that sometimes endings lead to new beginnings, that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into, that sometimes in the darkest moments you find the light. 6 months later, they married by the Han River at sunset, a small ceremony that blended Korean and Nigerian traditions. Ji-woo, nearly 15 months old and walking now, toddled down the makeshift aisle carrying a small pillow with the rings. Kelsey wore white lace, with traditional Nigerian jelle wrapped around her head in vibrant blue and gold. Taehyun wore a modern suit but performed the traditional Korean bows to honor both his late wife and Kelsey's late daughter, a gesture that made Kelsey cry before the ceremony even began. Her mother flew in from Lagos, crying the entire time, unable to believe her daughter was marrying into one of Seoul's most powerful families. Taehyun's family attended in full force, no longer questioning but accepting, even celebrating. When they exchanged vows, Taehyun's in Korean, Kelsey's in English and Igbo, there wasn't a dry eye in attendance. I promise to honor your past while building our future, Taehyun said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I promise to be the man Ji-woo needs and the husband you deserve. I promise to love you through every storm. I promise to be the mother Ji-woo lost and the partner you can trust. Kelsey replied, her voice breaking. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. I promise to love you even when it's dangerous, even when it's hard, even when the world says we don't make sense. When they kissed, Ji-woo clapped his hands and shouted, Ioma, Appa, making everyone laugh through their tears. The reception was a fusion of both cultures, Korean barbecue and Nigerian jollof rice, traditional drums and modern music, soju toasts, and palm wine blessings. But the moment Kelsey would remember forever came late in the evening, when Taehyun pulled her aside to a quiet corner of the venue. There's one more thing, he said, leading her to a private room. Inside stood an easel with a large canvas covered by silk cloth. I commissioned this months ago, Taehyun said quietly. I wanted you to have it, to remember. He pulled the cloth away. Kelsey gasped. The painting showed three figures, a woman holding a baby, a man standing beside her, and between them, a translucent figure of a small girl with soft curls and bright eyes. The style was ethereal, beautiful, heartbreaking. "Chidinma," Kelsey whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "She's part of our family too," Taehyun said softly. "She brought you to us. You don't have to forget her to love Jiwoo. You don't have to choose." Kelsey turned and buried her face in his chest, sobbing. "How did you know?" "Because I feel the same way about Seo-yeon," he admitted, referring to his late wife. "She gave me Jiwoo. You gave Jiwoo life. Both are true. Both matter." They stood there together, looking at the painting that honored all the love and loss that had brought them to this moment. Later, much later, when the guests had left and Jiwoo was asleep in his crib, Kelsey and Taehyun stood in the nursery watching him breathe. "Do you ever think about it?" Kelsey asked quietly. "How unlikely this all is." "Every day," Taehyun admitted. "A Nigerian woman and a Korean gangster. A housekeeper and a crime lord. A woman still grieving and a man still broken." He pulled her close. "It shouldn't have worked, but it did." "Because of him," Kelsey said, looking at Jiwoo. "He brought us together." "No," Taehyun corrected gently. "You brought us together. You chose to break the rules. You chose to help when you didn't have to. You chose to stay when it got dangerous. You chose love when grief said you couldn't." Kelsey leaned her head against his shoulder. "I thought I'd never be happy again after Chidinma died. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life just surviving. And now I'm not just surviving," Kelsey said softly. "I'm living. I'm loving. I'm whole again." She paused. "Well, almost whole." Taehyun pulled back to look at her, concerned. "Almost?" Kelsey took his hand and placed it on her stomach, where a barely there curve had begun to show. "I found out this morning," she whispered. "I was going to wait until after the wedding, but I can't keep it from you. Taehyun. He kissed her before she could finish, deep and reverent and full of wonder. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "You're pregnant?" 3 months, Kelsey confirmed. "I was scared to hope, scared to tell you, scared that." "Don't be scared," Taehyun said firmly, his hands cradling her face. "Not of this. Never of this." He dropped to his knees in front of her, pressing his forehead against her stomach. "Another chance. Another gift." Kelsey's hands tangled in his hair. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it," Taehyun said, his voice muffled against her dress. "Grateful. Terrified. Overwhelmed. Blessed." Jiwoo stirred in his crib, and they both froze. But he just rolled over, hugging his stuffed tiger, and settled back into sleep. "He's going to be a big brother," Kelsey whispered. "He's going to be amazing at it," Taehyun said, standing and pulling her close again. "Just like his mother is amazing at everything." They stood there in the nursery, holding each other, the moonlight streaming through the windows and painting everything silver. Two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage. Two grieving hearts that had learned to beat together. Two impossible worlds that had collided and created something beautiful. The nursery was different now, painted soft yellow instead of blue, with 2 cribs instead of 1. Jiwoo, now almost 2 years old, played in the corner with building blocks, chattering to himself in a mix of Korean, English, and Igbo words. In the first crib, his baby sister Chioma slept peacefully, her tiny fist curled near her face. Kelsey sat in the rocking chair, nursing her newborn daughter, feeling the familiar pull and contentment. This time was different from nursing Jiwoo. Chioma was hers by blood and by birth, the daughter she thought she'd never have after losing Chidinma. But Jiwoo was just as much hers, just as much her son, even without biology to bind them. Taehyun entered quietly, having learned long ago how to move silently when babies were sleeping. He kissed Kelsey's head, then Chioma's, then crossed to Jiwoo and scooped him up, making the toddler giggle. "Emma," Jiwoo said, reaching for Kelsey even in his father's arms. He'd been calling her that for over a year now. The first time it happened, Kelsey had cried for an hour, overwhelmed by the gift of being someone's mother again. "I'm here, baby," Kelsey said softly. "Give Emma a few minutes with your sister. Then it's your turn for snuggles." They'd named the baby Chioma, good God, in Igbo, not as a replacement for Chidinma, but as a continuation. A reminder that even after devastating loss, goodness could return. Kelsey looked around at her life. At the husband she adored. At the son she'd bonded with through circumstance and love. At the daughter she'd carried and birthed. At the home they'd built in this impossible, dangerous, beautiful world. "What are you thinking?" Taehyun asked, settling Ji-woo on his lap while the toddler played with his father's watch. "That I never expected this," Kelsey admitted. 2 years ago, I was cleaning houses and crying myself to sleep every night. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered." She gestured around at the nursery, at their children, at him. "And now I have everything I never knew I needed." "You saved us first," Taehyun reminded her. "Ji-woo and I both. We were drowning before you." "We saved each other," Kelsey corrected. "That's how the best love stories work." Chioma finished nursing, and Kelsey lifted her to her shoulder, gently patting her back. Taehyun stood and brought Ji-woo over, and they stood together as a family. Ji-woo between them. Chioma in Kelsey's arms, Taehyun's arm around all of them. "Family," Ji-woo announced proudly, having learned the word in 3 languages. "That's right, baby," Kelsey agreed. "Our family." She caught her reflection in the window, a Nigerian woman in comfortable clothes, her natural hair in twists, holding a baby who had her eyes and nose, standing next to a reformed crime lord and a toddler who called her mother. A family that looked nothing like traditional stories, but was perfect in all the ways that mattered. Outside, Seoul spread out below them, the city that had broken her and rebuilt her, that had taken everything and given her more than she'd lost. And Kelsey realized that sometimes the most unlikely stories become the most beautiful ones. Sometimes the darkest nights lead to the brightest mornings. Sometimes, when you think you're just surviving, you're actually finding your way home. "I love you," Taehyun whispered against her hair. "All of you. Forever. Forever," Kelsey echoed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Ji-woo reached up and patted both their faces. "Love," he repeated carefully, his little voice serious. Chioma made a small sound of contentment. And in that moment, in that nursery filled with love and light, and the promise of tomorrow, Kelsey Okonkwo Choi knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The grief would always be there. Chidinma would always be her first daughter, always be remembered, always be loved. But grief had transformed. It had become the foundation for new love, new life, new family. She'd lost everything once, and in losing everything, she'd found even more. Not because the pain disappeared, but because she'd learned that the heart doesn't choose between old love and new love. It expands. It holds both. It carries the weight of what was lost and the joy of what was found, and somehow, impossibly, it keeps beating. We have come to the end of the story. Thank you for watching. Share this story with someone who needs to know that after loss, there can be more. That grief doesn't end love, it transforms it. That family is what you build, not just what you're born into. If this story moved you, drop a comment. Would you choose love after devastating loss? Could you trust again after everything was taken? Subscribe for more stories about finding light in the darkest places.